When I heard that news that Paul DePodesta took a job with the Colorado Rockies, I said, all right, that's a step in the right direction. I might not know it. He like Tommy from Martin. I might not know exactly what it is that man did, but I knew he had somebody's ear. And I knew he survived a lot of different regimes, and I knew that it was time for a change. He did not get fired. We are going to break down the minutia of everything about Paul DePodesta's tenure with the Cleveland Browns. Why did he make the decision to leave now? I heard he was the Rockies' third choice, by the way. He wasn't even the first choice.
Damn.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
So
that's never a good feeling.
Why did he make the decision to walk away from it now? Was it him trying to get out ahead of something? Like he knew something was coming down the road? Did he feel like this situation no longer served him? Or did he just get the opportunity to be back a part of Major League Baseball and he wanted to seize the moment?
Yeah, listen, I think that is the $1 million question, right? Like, which one of those scenarios is playing out here? Is this I guess there's a third scenario, which is the Browns were kind of I think his contract was coming up due because he signed a 5-year extension, I believe, in 2021. So I think 2026, he would have had to be up for a new contract. So maybe the timing just kind of worked out. But maybe the Browns were like, yeah, we'll see about like extending you. But I mean, all I've ever heard is that the Haslams really valued Paul DePodesta's opinions, thoughts, perspectives on things. That's why they brought him in. In the statement they put out yesterday, they mentioned how he helped revamp the way that they go about evaluating talent and players through the pre-draft process, especially. We at least know that's one thing that he's credited for with this organization. Another thing is hiring Kevin Stefanski. He was very big on Kevin Stefanski 2 years in a row in 2019 and then 2020. So the three scenarios are what you laid out, the two you laid out, and then maybe he was just kind of told or forced out behind the scenes like, hey, we're not going to renew your contract, so you might as well start looking for other jobs. I'm here to tell you, though, Earl, and listen, I am glad that you feel rejuvenated to a degree in this organization where you're getting bought back in, you're excited a little bit again, you think this is a good step towards the future. I'm going to be honest, though, man, I just don't know. Like, I don't get the sense that this signals what I think a lot of people, everyone would jump to the easy conclusion of, oh, Paul DePodesta's gone. Like, I know Nick had a great rant on Afternoon Drive that day about, like, there's hope for the future, like, blah, blah. And I get that. I get where that's the initial reaction. And I'm not telling you not to be excited about it. But I don't get the sense that this is now some bat signal that all of a sudden, hey, Kevin's out at the end of the year. Barry's out at the end of the year. I think right now, Jimmy Haslam is still operating under the premise that both those guys are going to be here beyond this season, so long, depending on what happens the rest of the way. We know that's always the case. Things can change quickly in this league. There's 9 games to go for this team. That's a lot of games to sort of sink or float in terms of your job security. But I honestly walked away when the dust sort of settled on the Paul DePodesta thing. I kind of walked away from it feeling like, man, I don't know if this is just like the foregone conclusion people think it is, that all of a sudden the organization is going to change the way they do things. This could just end with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski here, or Andrew Berry getting a promotion to chief strategy officer.
I was going there.
And then somebody, right?
I was going there.
So it could just end up being the same. Maybe we find out like who is accountable for certain things more now. Like if the team starts turning it around, maybe we start to realize, oh, maybe Barry didn't have as much influence on some of these picks, and DePodesta have more say in that than we thought. And now Andrew Barry is getting a chance to do his thing, and he's actually building a good roster. We'll see, but like it could very well end that way. And so I'm not necessarily sitting here thinking that this just means fire sale is the wrong word. That's more of a trade deadline thing, but like tear down, cleaning house, this whole thing's going to start building back up this offseason. I don't know if that's a guarantee.
So, of course, now my mind started racing, right, when this news happened, and I started to mirror it back to the fact that Andrew Berry did not speak last week. And I started thinking about Andrew Berry's overall job title, right? He is the president of football operations, okay? And so, for me, I started thinking to myself, did this mean that Andrew Berry possibly has Jimmy Haslam's ear more than what we believe he does? Does this mean a possible promotion for Andrew Berry? Does this mean that Andrew Berry might go out here and hire the next general manager for the Cleveland Browns and still remain president of football operations? Does this mean that, you know what, he might delegate the task of talent evaluator and focus on every other thing that the Haslams might believe that makes him strong in his position of like president of football operations. Could this possibly mean that for him? To be honest with you, I really don't have a clue what it means for Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah.
I know that the opinions and the feedback on social media yesterday was a lot of mixed reactions as far as how culpable Paul DePodesta was for what took place here during his tenure. The Browns are what 56, 99 and 1?
Yeah.
Under him having that
He didn't quite
role.
get that 100th loss, though.
Yeah, he stepped away from before. And so, these things just don't come out of nowhere, and these things just don't happen overnight. And the fact that Andrew Berry didn't speak last week, I do wonder if the situation between Paul and the Rockies, started to gain more traction last week. And the Browns behind the scenes were kind of like restructuring their brass to figure out, okay, this is how this is going to look as we go forward for the rest, at least, of this season. Who knows? That could be a reach on my end, but I'm just saying.
I think that's an interesting thought, though. Like, an interesting question. Like, what, it's the first year he didn't speak, obviously. Like, what, maybe because this was coming down the pike here, it was kind of like, hey, let's figure out, like, the direction we're heading from a front office standpoint. And like I said, I still believe in my heart of hearts that Jimmy Haslam wants to keep these guys intact beyond the season. At least as things stand right now. He has said that he has doubled down on that. He has tripled down on that. He just said it 2 weeks ago at the owners' meetings that he largely wants to stick by these guys and he thinks they're headed in the right direction. So I do think that that's true. But again, like I get why there's some excitement here because, and here's the thing, like as long as the Browns were ambiguous about what Paul DePodesta did, there was always going to be questions. And like the reaction that we got on Wednesday when this news came down, or I guess Thursday, was it Thursday? The reaction we got on Thursday was always going to be a thing as long as the Browns were ambiguous about what he did. Because if you're ambiguous about job titles, if you're ambiguous about roles, that person's always going to be found culpable in some capacity. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Listen, it's what's crazy is when Paul DePodesta first got here, I think people really liked what he was bringing to the table because, yeah, you stripped it down to the studs and you had to rebuild. But think about the players that you got out of that. Like his thought process, the idea of draft and develop and what you see in like the Moneyball movie with the A's and the way that they analytically figured out like what guys are going to be fits for things, that largely worked early on. Because the teardown method got you Myles Garrett, it got you David Njoku, it got you Denzel Ward, it got you Baker Mayfield, it got you Nick Chubb. So early on, it looked like he was going in the right direction.
I strongly misinterpreted this role early on. When he was first hired, right, this is a couple years after Jimmy buys the team.
Right.
And those initial press conferences, and I could be totally wrong, but I thought that his role was going to be more on the business side of things as far as, stadium renovations, sponsorships, things like that served in that capacity, like almost like a brand ambassador or brand manager type thing, right? I had the assumption, clearly it was a false assumption, that that's what he was here to do, to help Jimmy on the business side of things when it came to marketing strategies, when it came to brands, and when it came to the business operation. I had no clue, no idea that this man was going to have a say and an opinion when it came to football operations, because knowing that he had the background of a baseball guy, as a fan, the math didn't add up to me of why in the world would he have any say when it comes to anything football. If you got him here for the business side of things because, like the branding and things that I just talked about, that made sense. But what we have come to learn is that, maybe he kind of like stepped over boundaries that he had no business stepping over. This news and last week's events has kind of made me waver a little bit on the fact that maybe they are not a package deal. Maybe both of them are not joint at the hip like I assumed them to be. Like when we talk about Andrew Berry's job title, he is the president of football operations. Now, we don't know detail for detail what his job title means and the description of every single thing that he does. But we know that, drafting players, scouting players and trading for players, the talent portion is a part of it. But there are so many different hats that this man wears when he's in that position. And sometimes when you wear so many hats because your title comes with that, that you can lose sight of some things. Follow where I'm going here. Up until recently, when you think about his career throughout the NFL, his stops with the Indianapolis Colts, his stops with the Philadelphia Eagles, Andrew Berry was known as a pretty solid talent evaluator, right? He was somebody that was known to have had a say in whoever was drafted on those said teams. We knew what his first tenure was here in Cleveland, and we knew how much he was respected.
Yeah.
He got this job because Jimmy Haslam had a lot of respect for him and did not want to lose him to another team. So we can't change ownership, and people got their own opinions about Jimmy Haslam as an owner. I tend to believe that the man is figuring it out as he's go. He's still making mistakes, but there are some things that he might be better at than he wasn't, right? What if it's a situation that he is looking at it now, okay, maybe Andrew Berry is suited for something else. And what if Andrew Berry is looking at the situation, because I told you this before, the gentleman that's the general manager in Minnesota, right? He left here and got that job. Yeah. Quessy. He was the assistant GM here. He's a pretty damn good talent evaluator.
Yeah.
What if it's a situation that Andrew Berry can seriously just hire a general manager, stay president of football operations, or even assume the role that Paul DePodesta once had and move on from there? What if Jimmy is looking at this situation like Andrew Berry might be irreplaceable to him and to the Haslam family in certain aspects, and maybe we just need to tinker other things about it?
Well, so that's the next part of this conversation that I think is maybe maybe the most important thing, because you see the news that Paul DePodesta is leaving, and I understand the reaction. I understand your feelings on it. I understand why fans that day were feeling very celebratory. It felt like a day for the organization to pivot and go in a different direction, maybe possibly a positive direction. Again, the word hope was tossed around a lot. But the key thing here, though, is, okay, we don't necessarily know what Paul DePodesta did. Like on a day-to-day basis for this team, everything that he did, what his role in the Deshaun trade was. They just say it was a collaborative effort, so we lump everybody together and say they all had a percentage of responsibility here. We don't know all those answers, but what we do know is that he had the ear of Jimmy Haslam, and that clearly they put a lot of value and a lot of stock over the last 10 years in him helping build this team and the direction they should go with things, and he had heavy influence on what they were trying to do. Now, I'm not saying they should have kept him, but the question of you lose that guy, you lose that person, now who has Jimmy Haslam's ear? Who is he going to lean on and turn to answer some of those key questions that he has to help build the franchise? That's now the thing that's a big question mark. And so you bring up Andrew. Maybe it is Andrew Berry. Maybe it is simply just plugging Andrew Berry into that role, or keeping Andrew Berry around as the GM because he believes in him and confides in him, and that's the guy that sort of becomes his what's the word I'm looking for? Like his launching pad, or like the guy that they can kind of brainstorm together and he can turn to for advice and information and trust to build the organization. Do you like that though? Would fans be happy with that if it was Andrew who becomes the new Paul DePodesta, or do you think he should hire somebody else? Because that's the other question is
not even new Paul DePodesta. I'm talking about, because again, he is president of football operations, right? So let's say he keeps that role of president of football operations and or assumes the role that Paul DePodesta had as well.
Yeah.
The question that you're asking is, will fans be okay with that? And I think that's a good question, because is it fans are just done with Andrew Berry, or is it that they don't like the fact that he can't draft players? You see what I'm saying? Is the frustration with Andrew Berry
I think those two things are connected. I think because he hasn't drafted great players, they're kind of done with Andrew Berry.
It depends on the level of fan you're dealing with.
True.
Because some fans can peel the layers back and say, okay, this is his job title. His job title consists of this, and this. Andrew Berry has been pretty good at trading players. That's a check. He's been horrible at drafting players. That's an X.
Up until this year,
right? So you can put a check minus question mark when you look at or X minus question mark slash question mark. I'm sorry. When you look at that part of it, you can look at some of the contracts that he's handed out, questionable, right? And so you can look at how he handles the players. A lot of players feel like, hey, Andrew Berry going to keep it 100 with you, right? He going to tell you what it is and what he's not. We've heard time in and time out, including with Joe Flacco, that when it came time for a player to move on, when they weren't going to be here, Andrew Berry did what he had to do to make sure that he lands on his feet. So that right there, even though we think the totality of the culture isn't all that great, that's a check in his box. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So when you look at the layers of it, what if it's just a situation that us as fans, we are tired of the talent evaluating part of it, and that the other parts of it is something that we can get with?
I think that's the question that each fan kind of has to answer for themselves, right? Like,
right.
Are you so done with Andrew Berry that you don't want him in this organization at all? Like you were talking about cleaning house,
right?
Which I don't necessarily think, again, to go back to the what we started the show with, I don't necessarily think that that's a guarantee just because Paul DePodesta is gone now. But is it that level, or is it like, listen, I can still get behind Andrew Berry and some of his evaluating, but I don't necessarily want him being the one drafting players. But that's the big mystery in this, right? And when I say like new Paul DePodesta, all I mean by that is, does Andrew Berry become the person that he confides in? Does he become the person who's like his springboard, who he's talking to all the time, who he trusts in the organization and has his ear the most? Is that what Andrew Berry becomes? Whatever the title is going to be is what the title is going to be. So, yeah, I think it's fair to ask, are fans okay with that? But the other part of this, too, over the years of Jimmy Haslam being here, the big thing people have said against him is he makes emotional decisions. He's not a football guy. He hasn't hired the right people. If it's not Paul DePodesta, and this is by no means am I trying to advocate for, they should have tried to keep Paul DePodesta around. I understand all the criticisms there, and I'm not saying that that's true. But it's almost like do you trust, we keep asking the question, do you trust this person to do this? Do you trust Andrew Berry to draft the next franchise quarterback? Do you trust Kevin Stefanski to develop that franchise quarterback? Do you trust Jimmy Haslam to identify that next person, that right person, to be his closest confidant, the person who has his ear the most, whether it's Andrew Berry or somebody on the outside? Because again, we're sitting here talking about how it was Paul DePodesta, and look at the results, and look where they got. Now, again, you can go and split hairs and say, well, when he first got here, they had a lot of talent. They drafted a lot of talent. The Deshaun thing clearly flipped that. We'll never know who. Well, maybe one day we'll find out who had the most say in that. But again, like, do you trust him? Do you trust him to make that decision to be like, this is the next person we're going to hire to be my closest confidant and drive the organization in the right direction so that we can get out of this rut that we're in? That's the other big part of this. So now it's, do you trust Jimmy Haslam to find that right guy to be his springboard? Do you trust Andrew Berry to be that guy, or if he's still here, draft those players to build the team? Do you trust Kevin Stefanski to develop those players? It's just another question you add to the list.
You want to have some fun?
I'm not saying not to be like. I'm not saying fear can't make you not make those moves.
No, because you're right.
But I'm just asking.
Let's have some fun. So we're gonna do it. Yes or no, live on air. If me and you trust him or not, right? On the count of three, we gonna answer if we trust Jimmy Haslam to make that decision or not. Live on air. 1, 2, 3. No. But the one thing I will give Jimmy credit for, though, and I do think this is something he learned from Paul, is like I do think he's changed. I think that's obvious because he would not be saying what he's saying about this current regime and wanting to stick by them if he hadn't changed. Bro, what if he living in the spheres, though? Like, what if he look at the situation with John Dorsey and see all the talent that he evaluated or that he brought to this organization, and because he hired Freddie Kitchen as a head coach, things went sour behind closed doors.
And he should have given him more time.
And he should have given him more time. So,
what's funny about that is Paul had a big hand in that because Paul was the one who wanted Kevin Stefanski. So once they fired John Dorsey, they looked at Paul DePodesta and said, well, all right, what do you think? And he said, get Kevin Stefanski. So they got Kevin Stefanski.
Like, did Jimmy make that trip to Detroit? Did he look at, I mean, again, we know who the GM is in Detroit, but John is there in an advisory role. So
why did John Dorsey have to hire Freddie Kitchens? Why did he have to hire Freddie Kitchens? Come on, John.
So
can we go back in time and have that one back?
He's changed. But do you think he's living in the spheres a little bit? Because we talk about that with Kevin when it comes to the DTR situation.
I think what you're talking about here is an overcorrection.
Yeah.
He used to live so in his fears that he would just fire people emotionally and be like, this guy ain't it, time to move on. And now he's course corrected so far that I do think there's a level of, I have to stand by this regime because that's what good owners do. And I think there's like a middle ground there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's another part of this. We don't have to get to this right now. There's another part of this conversation about like other coaches that could be fired or become available, and if the Browns stand by, like, I don't know, man. Like, I mean, this is the same owner who kept Hugh Jackson around after 1-31 and gave him another chance. So I do think there's a level of like, yeah, he's changed in there, but it goes back to how long is too long too. Like I get continuity, but you don't just do continuity for continuity's sake. So how long is too long before you have to pull that cord?
I mean, so then the next question, like we are basically going down a list of, who is it that we really should blame? But me and you said you cannot change ownership, right? And so we don't trust Jimmy Haslam's decision making, but what can we do about that? We can say whatever we want to say about Paul needing to be gone, Andrew needing to be gone, Kevin needing to be gone. But if people really feel like that the issue is Jimmy Haslam, well, Jimmy not going anywhere. Matter of fact, he just doubled down in Brook Park. So what do you do as a fan if you really don't trust Jimmy Haslam right now to make the right decision to hire the right people?
It's kind of, do you want Jimmy to go back to the person he used to be and fire everybody and try to do it the right way? And it's kind of that, it's that middle, that's the debate I think fans are having. Do you want Jimmy to be old Jimmy and fire everybody and start fresh? Or do you want Jimmy to be new Jimmy and be like, I'm patient, I'm measured, I'm not just going to make rash decisions on things? I think right now it's probably more the former. I think people want Jimmy to go back to, let's start from scratch and rebuild this thing. But then the main question of these questions we're asking becomes, do you trust Jimmy to actually find those people and put them in power without especially having this close advisor close by to help him make those decisions? Somehow he ended up with John Dorsey here. So at some point he got it somewhat right.